Welcome back, Academy. Today I'm going to be doing this Q&A. It's been quite some time since I've done this, partly because I just didn't think anyone cared. So when I asked for the questions post the other day, which I will be showing on the screen, I got quite a few. I thought it was just going to be a few questions that I'd answer in the community post, but these were ones that would either be too short for a community post, like play any other strategy games? No. Well, it depends on what you mean by that. We'll get into that. Or what do you do for a living, which is going to be the first one I'll ask, or I'll answer rather. And this was 6 days ago. Shit, I need to speed up. And everything in between, right? And some of these are more detailed, like, you know, tera questions and things like that. So we're gonna go over everything. I really enjoy being with my audience. I'm glad that I can stream again. And so yeah, let's do this. The first question: what do you do for a living outside of Pokemon? And so to answer that, well, I'll answer it first. I help guys specifically between the ages of generally 21 and 34. Is usually a Western male, so Europe, in US, Canada, America, US, Canada, Europe if it's an online relationship, but in person, obviously America, that's where I live. But yeah, American male. He's gonna be ages between 21 and 34, and they come to me when they have problems where they feel lonely, socially anxious, or they have a relationship or want a relationship with a quality woman, or sometimes if they just want to be better with like a large I'd say just be, this is the best way to put it, if they just want to have the optionality, right? So that would be the first category, and I'd say actually that's my biggest category. In fact, most guys' problems have something to do with, I feel low on the totem pole socially. It just so happens that a lot of times when they come to me, it is about, hey, there's this particular woman that I'm with and it feels like she's completely uninterested in me and I don't know why. And I want to know how to fix that without any gimmicks, any like, you know, putting the woman down nonsense that you see online and all that stuff. And so offline, everybody knows me for, let's just say, being able to sustain and attract, debating how real I want to get with you guys about this. If I'm talking about it, I suppose we'll just get as real as it gets. Not as real as it gets, but real enough. So just how I am offline when it comes to relationships and whatnot, I am someone that really enjoys female company, and so it's very often that I'll be with a Mariah. I was gonna say a Mariah and Myriad. What's the word for that? Let's just use a normal word. More than one woman in any given time. And that will be consensual, and they'll know of each other and, you know, interact. And sometimes it's two, sometimes, you know, more than two. And guys who know me offline would always go like, bro, what? Well, you know, like, how do you have multiple attractive women that know about each other and hang out with each other and are all quote unquote with you? That's how the average guy is going to think of it. They're sharing me, quote unquote. That's not actually how women think, or that's not actually even how it works. And so for most people, that's fairly unconventional. And, you know, when you see something like that, you're like, okay, maybe this guy knows something I don't know. And that is true. because most guys don't know shit. Just keeping it 100 with you guys. Man, especially when I see this stuff online. And the core reason for that, just to give like a little tidbit on that, is because most of the stuff you see and the reason for most relational turmoil is just because the guy doesn't understand his value. And a lot of the stuff I see online are the man versus the woman. And that's a really poor frame. If a woman is your enemy, you're a very weak man. Right? I'll just put it that way. But not to say that there aren't batshit crazy women out there and that can cause problems and all that. That's not the point. But we're not going to go into that here because that's besides the point. So because of that, and you know, friends and word of mouth, and I would get a lot of requests on like, what do I do here? What do I do here? What do I do here? How do I do it? Da, 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 da. And this would range from guys who were already like pretty successful, quote unquote, in dating, but just really struggled to have that woman comply and actually want to do what he wants her to do. Willingly, happily, whether that be cook, whether that be showing him respect, whether that not be embarrassing him for like. And so a lot of those things stem from the man, but the roots are not, and the solution is not some, hey, let me let me show you this trick and how to defeat your wife or how to fucking defeat the women in the fucking society. Like, what? The problem is almost 100% of the time with the man and how he's been showing up in that relationship, and the woman just reflects him. And so that started becoming a thing where, because psychology, what I went to school for, and that's why my Pokemon content feels this way. So I'm going into like really getting into answering that question because it's related to another question that I got yesterday as well. So I started attacking might not be the right word, but shout outs to Pokemon. I started dealing with and observing through dealing with so many guys that the root of a lot of their relational issues, a lot of their social issues, even with men-to-men interaction, comes from a self-image issue that's rooted in a combination of the reputation they have with themselves. So they've done things they're not proud they've observed themselves and remembered. They've observed themselves do things they're not proud of so many times that they have no respect. And so if you do that for years on end, constantly subvert what you care about because you're afraid somebody may react negatively, or just repeated doing things you don't even respect other people doing, and you do them in the dark, and over time the awareness that is you is observing yourself, which is why you feel shame and guilt. Who's guilty if nobody saw you do it, quote unquote? How can you have self-guilt and shame if, quote unquote, no one saw you do it? Isn't that what it means? Right? So there is you observing yourself, and if it's a thing that you're like, man, this is something I really should do something about, that judgment is being placed on oneself because you always have a relationship and reputation with yourself, which is what self-confidence means. You have high self-confidence, it means you have a reputation with yourself that you are the type of person who's capable of doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done and get what you want. You have low self-confidence, quote unquote, and that self-confidence exists in different areas. You might have high self-confidence and mine's low self-confidence socially. It is something that, if you have low self-confidence, is because you've observed yourself fail, break your word, and do all these things so many times that you no longer have any confidence in anything that leaves your mouth. And so you just get this sensation whenever you're like, I'm going to the gym this year, or I'm going to the gym tomorrow, or I'm gonna go talk to that girl, I'm gonna ask for the raise, I'm gonna whatever male things of life, right? I'm gonna have that conversation with my wife. You succumb to fear so many times that as you observe yourself, you're no longer somebody you would hang out with. And that's poisonous. And so once I realized that the root of that, now there are some knowledge-based things that I teach guys when they come to me for that in particular. But the fundamental issue is their self-perception. And I mean, if I've had $1 for how many guys I've worked, man. But there's nothing more fulfilling than seeing that guy come out on the other side of that way better, way more confident, way more internally at peace, way more content, and then observing his relationship reflect that. The woman's happier, or sometimes they split up if it was just an awful situation or if it was too far gone. But even if they split, the guy's at greater peace because of the split, not feeling like he'll never find love again. And so as he moves into the next situation, it's from a place of his cup being full, not from a place of his cup being empty, and he needs that woman to fill it. So it's fulfilling. It's not something I talk about very often. Certainly not online. It's actually not something I even talk about a ton offline. But as I mentioned, when people see how my life is and how women respond to me in real life, they tend to ask me stuff. And then when I answer it, they're like, I've never heard anything like that in my life. I thought I had to be a gimmickster and I had to use lines and I had to, text in this particular way. And I had to, you mean to tell me I can actually just be myself? And that actually works? Yes, but you have to know what to do. But that's the energy, and then that's what gravitates. So that's where a lot of guys will, I'd unintentionally get clients for that. But the more public aspect of that business is the guys who struggle with discipline in some capacity. And I don't mean the David Goggins kind of way. I mean issues that are rooted in internal conflict or psychological resistance. So for example, I actually had this guy on the podcast, so I use him. I remember one of my guys, he just started a new sales position where he had to make calls in the morning, such and such. But man, when it said he was just, anxiety was eating him up, right? He just thought of making the call was just anxiety inducing. And so he reached out. It's somebody I'd worked with a couple of times before. So he reached out, he's like, oh Jam, I need help with this particular thing. So he booked 2 sessions. Another thing with my thing is it's about speed. I don't intend to typically most things are resolved over the 4-week training. Even in the more severe cases. Yeah, most things. But depending on the subject matter, it can be done in 1 or 2 sessions. So speed is really critical, particularly with men. Men want to know what to do to fix the thing. They're not trying to have an ultra long emotional conversation unless it's necessary for them to get what they want. Whereas women will tend to enjoy the conversational long-term, what people think of as therapeutic aspect more. Like my psychology application is based on performance. Like you want to perform better at this particular thing. Let's remove all the psychological resistance around that and let's implement the actual things you need to do. And then they go off and soar. And so in this case, he was having trouble, having a lot of resistance around making sales calls. And so we did 2 sessions and he ended up being, I think 2 weeks later, I remember saying to him in the call, watch in 2 weeks, because this has happened so many times, it's very predictable. It's actually incredibly predictable to the point where if you've ever messaged me and I said set a timer for 2 weeks from now, is because I know what will happen is 2 weeks from now the change will occur, but you won't remember or attribute it to what we discussed or the exercises we did to remove the underlying resistance psychologically. And so all that will happen is you'll feel like, oh dang, things are working out, that's crazy, but you actually won't remember what you did for that to happen. And so why do I have them set the 2 week timer? Is it because I want the credit? Maybe to some degree, but not really, right? Because I want them to understand that, one, it will feel like it was an eternity ago that you had that problem. But if you don't attribute the proper reason for the change, you're going to run into a roadblock again. But if you, let's say you lost some weight because you stopped drinking milk, but in 2 weeks, all you see is the weight loss, and you're like, oh damn, I'm losing weight, but you don't attribute it to the fact that you stopped drinking milk, then you'll start drinking milk again and you gain the weight back. And it's not until it clicks between the, like, what's the cause and the effect, and the gaining weight is the effect, and the drinking milk is the cause. Once you realize that drinking milk is the source, then you'll stop. But if you don't think it's the source, you'll keep drinking milk and you won't know why you keep gaining weight. So what I do is I have them set, and I'll predict, I'll say, watch, in 2 weeks, set a reminder about the thing, saying, hey, 2 weeks ago, I had an intention of blah, 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 blah. I did this, and that. What is life like now? And when that notification comes up, they're like, holy shit, I can't believe that was 2 weeks ago. And this has happened with myself so many times. That's how I know. I'm like, that was 2 weeks ago? Life is completely different now. And so that caused me to go, and then I'll experiment with that in the hundreds of people at this point, and on myself in an ungodly amount of times. I don't take on female clients, but I do know a lot of women, and so I'll teach them all the things that I use with the men, more so for data, but also because I love them, you know. And I don't mean romantic love, though there are some that I have romantic love for, but I just mean that, you know, I like women. I was raised around a lot of women. I know my dad and I have a great relationship and all, but, you know, I just don't have that animosity and resentment that is so common. Though I've had my challenges and could have gone down that route, but by the grace of God, I'm here. Did not go down the dark path that I see a lot of guys on these days. So yeah, that's an example. And so that guy ended up being, going from that 2 weeks later to being, I think, the #1 news salesperson, something Texas. I think it was Southeast Texas or something like that. That was amazing, and I was really happy for him. So that's an example. I've had guys come. Another common one is guys who want to give up on their porn habit. Porn habit and overeating, or some kind of eating, either eating more or eating less. Or guys are like, man, I just cannot stay consistent with blank. It could be gym, that could be whatever. So to kind of answer that question, so that's what people pay me for. I've been reluctant about talking about this on my actual YouTube, on my Pokemon stuff. But more and more over the years, guys have been coming to me for the thing guys come to me for offline. And I kept wondering, how did these guys know? I never marketed, I never mentioned. And it would just be some version of, I could just tell by something in how you were talking. It was like, this guy knows something, or this guy can help me. And I've gotten messages with the most intimate details of a person's life that actually literally no one else on earth they told. And we'd go through it in the DMs, and so I've had a lot of data, and I'm so blessed for the academy in that aspect. I mean, there be hundreds of guys whose issues have been solved behind the scenes just through not even like an actual training. There are dudes who have done the actual training, but I'm talking just like Discord messages. And you know, it's just been an amazing blessing, because what it does is it allows a person to confidentially, that's one of the benefits of the anonymity, right? Like, you can confidentially share the deepest things that are bothering you, get the assistance, and nobody knows about it. So nobody knows about your problem, and then nobody knows about, you get that outlet to say the thing, and then nobody knows about not just the problem, but like there's that disconnection between the offline and the online, so you can get the benefits while still, you know, keeping some of that confidentiality beyond just like the normal confidentiality that happens in conversations. And so, man, I remember one kid, he was like 15, 16 at the time. This was in the academy like 3 years ago. It was really maybe even 4 years ago, and fucked his life up, offline and online, going on Showdown. Some fucking loser told him to do something. He never told me what he did, or maybe he did, but I don't remember. And it just got him either banned from Showdown or really ruined his relationship with his family, all that. I remember that super vividly. And he saw me having a conversation with, as a Just for Jam channel in the Academy Discord, where people used to come and everybody would watch the conversation happen, and then I'd get a lot of PMs from that. And then he came, he's like, you know, we keep this between us, and then he shared, he's like, I feel like you might be the only person who can help me. He shared just an awful situation, and then we worked through it, gave him the options as far as like the only 2 or 3 things that could have this navigate, or have the only 2 or 3 ways he could go about this to navigate through the storm of his offline life with his family and his friends at school. I think he got expelled or something like that, or it was something like that. And his family was like, he's a discipline, you know, like all of that. And we navigated through it, and now he knows himself. I won't say who it is, but you know, every year he'll message me now. I'll get a random message. He's like, "Happy Teachers Day, Jam," which is super funny, but warms my heart, because now he ended up, after 1 year, about a year or 6 months, ended up reestablishing a relationship with his parents, getting back into school, and now he's in the 2nd year of law school. And so, you know, moments like those, I'm like, man, but there's so much rich data. And so that also answers this guy's question, which is another guy that helped, because he asked me, where did you learn everything about your interest in life guiding? Also, what are your favorite must-read books, the ones that were most impactful and unforgettable? And then I was like, what do you mean by life guiding? He's like, where did you learn about what you were trying to help people with? Basically life coaching, would you say? And this, he linked a time where he messaged me last year for help, like with this, the desire and resistance releases, how to find what's holding people back, spot and solve internal conflicts. So again, psychology is my background. I just didn't want to be a therapist in the traditional sense. I did not. I worked at a residential mental health facility for like a year, and I shadowed and observed it there. I was like, no, that's not, it didn't light me up. That's just, I didn't know what it was going to be at the time. And I went through the journey of going into sales, and I completely things that are completely unrelated to psychology. But all I knew back then was that I had this weird desire. I was like, I was like, I want to help people free their minds. I want to help. I didn't know what that meant. Now it's so clear what my younger self was trying to articulate. But the thing that I hate the most is seeing a guy with so much potential just fucking waste his life because he's afraid, or because he has some kind of, nothing pains me like that. Right? And it being because he did not have access to the knowledge, because he didn't have access to the information. And so to answer this question because they're kind of related. So they'll answer when you watch this, you can see. It's not life coaching. I'm not some guy who's trying to tell you what to do with your life. Guys come to me when they have a very specific pain. Like, I want to stop fucking watching porn all day. I want to get better with women. I'm tired of being rejected. I'm sick and tired of my woman disrespecting me. I'm sick and tired of having low self-confidence. I'm sick and tired of being anxious about this thing or the other. They usually come with me to me about a very specific thing. It's not. Sometimes it can be more overarching, but it's not because I have the answers to life, like I'm fucking Jesus Christ or something. It's because a lot of the reasons why people feel lost, or I don't know what the hell, is because of some underlying fear of what if I get it wrong? What if I try and I get it wrong? And I lose my home, or I lose my family, or I lose, like, some underlying fear around that. And so when we unpack all of that, it tends to feel like what people, I guess, think of life coaching, but everything is life. So every kind of coaching is life coaching. But I don't particularly associate myself with that label. I'm a very scientific, as you know, when it comes to mine. I don't do random shit. So I don't care for, like, oh, I believe this will help you. Like, I don't give a fuck what I believe. Does it actually align itself with the laws of human behavior? And can that be tested? Can that be tracked? Right. So yeah, but if you don't know anything about me offline, I can see why. It's like, why does this Pokemon dude know so much about this stuff? Like, what's that about? Right. So the category you'd put that in is maybe life coaching. I was like, no. But it also explains why sometimes, you know, guys will watch the videos and they'll go, man, I watch Jam because I feel like I'll get some life advice from it. I watch Jam because I always feel smarter after I'm done, or some shit like that. It's not really about that. What's happening is that once I started getting those hundreds of messages, it became clear to me, and it became I started to dawn on me that, oh, holy shit, these guys behind these avatars are real people. Like, I knew that, but like, meaning they're real people with real pain. And so I'm like, is there a way I can blend or kind of drip in the ways I help guys offline with the way I help guys with Pokemon? Because I started to see a parallel between the things Pokemon wise and the things offline. And I was like, oh my fucking god. And that's where the whole gaming psychology field that I'm probably coining as I go emerged from, where who you are offline, you are the avatar, meaning who you are offline is who you are online when you're gaming in particular. So if you're impatient offline, then you're impatient online. You're impatient in your game. If you rage a lot, it's because you're like that offline. And the beauty of that, the great opportunity of that, and what I learned from doing so many of the customized coaching boot camps in Pokemon, is that a lot of times when guys would do those boot camps, they'd end up having massive offline transformations. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, why would a guy taking a Pokemon boot camp get jacked 3 months later? Like, why would a guy doing a Pokemon boot camp feel more confident to approach women and get a girlfriend during the boot camp? These are real stories. Or why would a guy, and that's what happened so much, and I'm like, what the? And so over the years of really digging into that's when it unlocked for me. I was like, right, because there's only one brain. There's only one brain. And that brain is going into every discipline we do. Martial arts, boxing, sports, work, school. It's the same brain. It's the same perspective, And so if they're negative and pessimistic and have low self-confidence, that's going to bleed into the other areas of their life. And so if you can use these different disciplines, if you can get a little bit of confidence in Pokemon, that will affect his confidence in other things, because his self-image changes. His inner elo increases with his outer elo. And then the question comes, if I can do that there, I thought I hit 1800. I was struggling in the 1400s before the boot camp. If I can do that, what else might I be holding myself back on? And then that sparks a question. So hopefully that answers in 30 minutes what you do for a living. It also explains why some of the times the Pokemon things feels like they parallel real life so much. That's because I'm intentionally doing that. I know that most guys, I'll never meet them, but I now understand that this is my, like, everybody else is like who I used to be, right? Or whatever challenge they have. And I'm like, man, you know, I wonder if I could, do I just separate my channel, even though I have information that could help? Do I just go full force and just tell you guys that it exists? Or do I kind of gently introduce it and merge it with Pokemon? And that's the route I decided to go. And because that's happened over time, people have started asking questions like, yo, Jay, why does your shit always feel like there's an underlying moreness to it than just Mons? And that's because it is. But I'm not going to force feed. I'm just going to sprinkle it in things that you already relate to. And my hope is that you have a slightly better day than you did before, or a eureka moment will occur. So Galaxy Knuckle, do I play any other strategy games? No, I actually don't play any other game than Pokemon. Yeah, I'll just leave that there. What are some teams you created that you're most proud of? So that's a good question. Most proud of. That's a different than what are my best teams. Most proud of. Honestly, I'd actually say the team that I played Finchinator with was probably one of my most. I'll pull it up. All right. Yo, I'm looking at this description right now. This is almost a decade ago. Can you believe this? This was for Pokemon World Cup. I had one of the best records in the World Cup for a few years, where it's like 10 games undefeated. But so that's where. Looking back, I should have done way better into. Holy shit, this has 857 likes. That's crazy. I had no idea it was this many. Well, that's 15,000 views. I know this is probably one of the most my viewers' favorite battles. I used to, like, back in the day, like, you know, I am a complete shell of my former channel. Like, back in the day, like, it wouldn't be 800 likes, but like, I may have like 4,000 viewers. I may have 4,000 subscribers and get 4,000 views, but it's my fault. You know, I was inconsistent, but it's probably one of my favorite teams, primarily because I remember when I was building this. I remember in my tour days, I didn't like using ultra standard teams. They needed to be consistent and effective in any case, meaning they're not matchup dependent. But I wanted to use common things in uncommon ways. And so Gastrodon, at the time, Tangrowth was RU, Magneton was RU. I think Gastrodon was RU as well. Mega Pinsir, Heatran, and Latios were all OU. And why Magneton? That's because Magneton was faster than Weavile, whereas Magnezone was not. But it also allowed me to trap and weaken Scizors and Skarmories and things of that nature, which were primarily Skarmory was probably one of the bigger counters to Pinsir. Zapdos was as well, but Skarm there were some other things. it also helped trap for Latios, but Scarm was one of the big reasons. Excuse me. There's something else as well, but I just cannot remember for the love of me. Pursuit existed back then as well, so you know Latios can potentially be pursued by Scizor, though it was pretty infrequent. But this team was so unorthodox, but at the same time so damn solid. And there were quite a few teams like this, but I don't have replays like this. But this was definitely up there. And another reason why my World Cup videos were so popular is because I believe this particular season, the first two games, people wouldn't watch the games just because they're like, oh, is Jam gonna win? They actually were watching like, is somebody gonna kill Amon? Because in this game, there's a little backstory behind this. Finch is a good guy. That's one of my dudes. It's not like, but back then Finch was saying about me that I was not, because people were like, you know, Jam's the best. They're like, oh no, he's overrated. But Finch was in my World Cup group, and so the first guy Finch was saying that was gonna top the group, I 6-0'd him, and then Finch was my next opponent. I 6-0'd him, and then the last guy I 5-0'd. But so it was more like, oh, is somebody gonna kill him on? But this is back when I played all the time. So now as I'm casually playing, can I get back to this level? Yes. But I was hungry back then. I was, you know, teenager. I was more in that zone. Now I'm more interested in passing on the information. And so there are principles that are tried and true that are not available anywhere else, because there are 4 levels of teaching. So real quick, with anything, when you're teaching somebody something, there are 4 levels to it. The lowest level is teaching them the tactics, which is usually what people think they want. And tactics is, how do I do a jam? How do I double switch? How do I do this? How do I, how? What do I do here? What do I do this turn? Tactics. Important, but if I only taught you tactics, you wouldn't go very far. Why? Because you'd always come back to me. And above that is strategy, which is, why do I do it? Why, where, why, right? Strategy is still contextual, right? Important, but contextual. Strategy is just the overall plan. The tactics is what to do. Strategy is closer to why do you do it. And principle is how it all works at the most fundamental level. And then you have something higher than that. For the sake of this video, I'm just gonna put question mark because that'll derail things. For now, you just need to know tactics, strategy, and principle. And so tactics, how to do it. So for example, Jam, what do I need to do to beat Tornadus T? Right. If I told you what to do to beat Tornadus T with that team, then every team you build will be through the lens of, if that's all I taught you, you'll all only have the same way to beat Torn T. If I teach you a strategy on how to beat Torn T, that's more on how to beat. How does Torn T work? And how in general you beat Torn T. Principle would be, how do you're not trying to beat Torn T, you're trying to solve a problem. How do you solve problems in general? What questions do you ask when you're solving a problem in general? So what you guys see in those community posts, the level I teach you guys from is the principle level. 80% of the content you're gonna get is a principle level because it's the most powerful level. Now the downside of that is sometimes I forget that, you know, you guys still need the tactical stuff. Like I saw Pink Across is doing a great job filling that gap. He made a video, something I was like, who thinks about this? I forgot that people don't know this. was how to make a mid-ground play and how to something, but just the tactical level. Like his channel is very good for the tactical things people need. And because those things are so ingrained in me, it's very hard for me to remember those unless somebody asks me the question, and that usually it's in the boot camp when they're doing that. So yeah, tactics. But yeah, Think Across, great channel, you can check that out. Doing a great job with filling in the competitive teaching aspect. Shout outs to him, and go YouTube him if you want to learn stuff like that. What my stuff is gonna focus principle and strategy primarily, but I do need to get back to teaching the tactics as well. So if you have any questions on tactics that you want to know, let me know. People usually ask the stuff in the DMs, and so I rarely ever make it public, and I'm like, oh, all right, I probably should have. But yeah, whatever. But that's just, it's neither here nor there. So that answers that. All right, Freestyle asks, what's your preferred way to use Terra? Do you prefer to use offensive, defense lead? Does it vary matchup game situation? So this is another example. So this is what he's asking is so Freestyle here is on the tactical level of understanding, which is tactical and strategy. He's asking, pay attention to the question. It says, what's your preferred way to use Terra? In a different context, there may be a guy asking me, Jam, what do you say to a girl when you go up to her? He's asking me the how, or you know, what do you wear? Well, that's still a little tactical. You know, what's your mindset before you talk to a girl, or before you make a sales call, or before you whatever, right? These are important, still strategic and tactical. It's not the highest level. So immediately when I read this, my immediate answer was like, that's not how it works. Because it's irrelevant what preference is. Pokemon is a problem-solving game. And so it's irrelevant what you prefer. Let's say I like Heatran, I like Choice Scarf Heatran. I prefer Choice Scarf Heatran sets. No one gives a fuck. The metagame doesn't give a fuck if you like Choice Scarf Heatran. Does it work? And so here, your preference never matters. The metagame doesn't care what your preference is. Sounds like a salesperson. The market doesn't care. Just true. It's what is required. When you're solving a problem, you do what's required. You don't do what you prefer. Now, you can solve a problem in a way that aligns, but not when it comes to Pokemon. Pokemon is a zero-sum game. Somebody wins and somebody loses. So you need to do whatever it takes in that battle to make sure you're on top. Even if it means T-waving. I might disown you as a subscriber, but it's okay. You did what you had to do. But yeah, I don't have any preference. I don't even think like that, because it's beyond that. You do what's required. And that goes for your teams and everything. I'm not going to say this name. I'm going to say Dumas048. How do you learn to separate yourself from losing games? I understand the mindset of trying to get better and learning from every game and trying to give yourself some grace, because we all make mistakes. But I still find it difficult because you can't just shut off your emotions, especially in important games, where I'll lose, where I also end up just replaying the same mistakes in my head and getting frustrated, and I can't go back in time and fix such an easy oversight. Overall, it leads to me enjoying Mons a lot less, which I want to work on because I like the game as a whole. Is there anything that's helped you get over the frustration or deal with the losing in the past? I'm not sure what you're gonna do with these questions, but please don't mention my user if you use my question. Oh, I just saw the last part. Sorry, bro, it's a little late. Besides, people saw this. Well, maybe he's saying his username because of the offensive nature of his name. I don't know. But good question regardless. This is because of a psychological phenomena where human beings tend to, so we have what's called an identity, right? Very critical component, right? We have what's called For a moment I had to think, like, I spelled this wrong. Might have still spelled it wrong. Right? What the hell is an identity? Right? Well, we have two-ish kinds, right? We have, let's just keep this very simple. Pokemon question. We have a public identity. That's what other people think you're like. We have a private identity, which is what you think you're like. Or publicly, what people think of you. Privately, what you think of you. This is called your persona. This is how other people think you are. That's that fake front you be putting up. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. Then you have your private identity, which is what you think of your self-image, or what people usually consider as their ego. So your self-image or your ego. So this is the one that's gonna matter most. So human beings are constantly seeking identity increases. This is also called status increases. We all want to be higher status. But what's interesting is there are two forms of status. Everybody knows about public status. That's the I want a Lamborghini. That's the I'm a millionaire. This is your public or social identity. Right, so that's public status. I'm a doctor. I'm an engineer. I'm a blah, 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 blah. Right? This is what you want other people to know you as. And so people want public status symbols, a car, a fucking jet, whatever. However, we also have a private identity, which is our self-image and ego, and that also has a status. And this is the true status we want. We want to have what's called high inner elo. So public identities, you can think of it as a ladder. So in Pokemon, we all have this private identity, and so we play public games, Pokemon, competitive Pokemon be one of them, with the desire of increasing. You don't think of it like this, but what you're trying to do is prove to yourself, not necessarily prove, but I'm going to use that term. You're trying to get evidence that you are that guy, which is self-confidence. You need evidence for your self-confidence. You need evidence that you're that guy. And so what do? We go out and we play public games to prove to ourselves that we're that guy. That's why when somebody says you have a big ego, it means you think you're that guy. The way you view yourself privately is that you're that guy. Usually somebody out externally is like very, think about it, right? If you're that guy and you know it, like you know your name, how many times do you walk around trying to convince people that your name is Jerry, for example? Never, because you have no doubt. Typically, if you're trying to publicly convey that you're that guy, it's because your inner elo is actually low. But that's a whole other conversation, right? But not always, but if you're you need me to believe something about you, very likely the fact that you don't believe it about yourself. So you need me to believe it, and then hopefully you believe it too. But what you're looking for is inner elo, inner status, high self-confidence. You want an inner elo boost. And so when you play those games, you fucked up and attached your inner elo to your outer elo. Meaning your rank on the ladder is tied to to your self-worth and your self-confidence. These are linked. And so if you're high on the ladder, your inner elo is high. You're like, I'm that guy. I knew it. I'm the man. Blah, 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 blah. Issue with doing that is when you lose, or when you tilt, or when you're below a certain rank, because you've identified yourself, I'm an 1800 player. When you drop below 1800, your emotions will tank, because now your inner elo is tanking with your outer elo. They're linked. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to tie your outer results with your inner confidence. So what you need to do is first is to get this understanding of that. Then you detach your outer results from your self-concept. There are exercises for this, but you can actually do this from just understanding what we're describing here. Because why? Just think about it this way. You're not an 1800 player. You are a Pokemon. You are playing Pokemon, and you've produced a level of, you've produced 1800 worth of results, so to speak. You're not your money. You're not a millionaire. You have $1 million, right? Those are two different things. If you conceptualize yourself as a millionaire, for example, you'll have $1 million and you'll stay there. And I've actually coached millionaires, but that's a whole different. Now I'll have $1 million, but I won't attach my identity and say I'll be a millionaire, because the issue with that is, one, it'll actually make it very difficult for me to go well beyond it, and it'll actually make it also difficult for me to go well below it. But my money will fluctuate my emotional state too much. So when I'm above $1 million, feeling good. When it drops slightly below, feel bad. And so my external reality, things that I have no control over, like your points, you have influence over your points, but you don't have supreme control over your points, right? Over time, the best player wins. But there are times where you're going to have a streak where you have 5 bad losses in a row. And if your internal elo tanks as a result, then you're going to try to, I need to get my identity back. You're playing game after game, game after game, game after game. So what you need to do is realize and accept that even if you're the quote unquote number one on the ladder, you have done things to produce the outcome, but you are not the outcome. You're not that guy. You only did the things that produces the results of what other people call that guy. You're just you. Yeah, you do dope shit, but you're not attached. And this is another thing guys struggle when it comes to women. Like, this is the actual reason why guys are deathly afraid, and why I was deathly afraid when I was younger to approach a woman. They have low inner elo, and they tie the reaction of the woman to their inner elo. So if I go up to her and she does not like me, because her reaction is tied to your self-worth, destruction. You feel like shit, you're ugly, you're worthless, you're this and that. And that manifests itself, even if you got the girl into an awful relationship. And I've seen this a billion times. So if we adjust the inner elo, the outer experience changes as well. But that's a whole different topic. So that's the true answer to how you deal with that. I know you're probably thinking, it's just a game, bro. Shut the fuck up. You're not wrong, but that's not the answer. Because there are plenty of things we do this with. Most guys are deathly afraid of talking to women. They actually have nothing to lose. They didn't have her before. They don't know her. They haven't interacted with her. So why don't they ever do it? Isn't that just a game, bro? Like, it's a bit more complicated than that. And that's okay. But that's the answer to that question, my guy. Hopefully that helped. Hopefully that helped everybody. Where did the name Mr. Jamvad come from? This is a quick one. So I'm from Jamaica originally. I was born there. And Vad is part of my name. And so, like, my actual first name. And so, yeah. I tried to, that's when YouTube, you couldn't have multiple people have the same username. So the Mr. was just, you know, when emails, they're like, here's some suggested emails. That's what it was. And, you know, yeah, Mr. Jamvad was born. But that's way before I intended to even have a following or anything. So I didn't think it mattered. I just wanted to have a YouTube channel so I could like comment on stuff and, you know, back in the day and all that. So, one sec. Visual analysis practice. But sorry, my phone just. But we plan to write any more books, at least one more, which was the one that was supposed to come out before the Art of War, which is the final version of the Art of Competitive Pokemon with the images, the full breakdown, like with stuff like that, like just a full comprehensive, doing it the right way. I've evolved a lot as a teacher and a writer, so I just feel like it's only right that you guys get a way better product. I was very young when I wrote that. I never wrote a book before, and so it was just kind of like, okay, I just want to share this information. Nobody's gonna buy it anyway, and more people got it than I thought would, and I'm glad for that. By the way, if you got the physical book on Amazon, I'm trying to get to 100 reviews. You could do me a huge favor and review that on Amazon right now. Please do so. Thank you. From a competitive standpoint, what was the best time frame generation of Pokemon area? If the era is not your favorite, then what is your favorite and what makes it your favorite? I don't know if I have a favorite era. I probably do, but I don't think that would be a true statement. I'd just be answering it just to answer it real quick. But best time frame, I'd say probably Gen 6. Reason being, Gen 6 had very little gimmicks. Gen 6 was a very raw skill tier. It was Gen 7 where shit like Z moves and Dynamax and Tera, these high variance things came about where no amount of skill can help me predict a Tera. You can get adjusted to it, but nothing ever can let me know what Tera something will be. Like if I'm staring down a Gambit late game, I can optimize for the most common Teras, but I can also lose a game because he's Tera Ghost. And Tera Ghost is like in the lower percentile of the options, or Tera Water, you know? And, you know, that's a pretty big pain in the ass for me. It always has been. Dynamax got banned, so that wasn't really a thing. But the game had no mechanic, which is why they're clinging to Tera now, because people did not like that. Well, nobody wanted Dynamax around because it was ridiculous, but for singles at least. But also it was like, dang. Whereas Oras had Megas, which was a thing, but it wasn't a thing at the same time. It was just another Pokemon, and it had its restrictions, and you knew they were coming. You only just didn't know when they were gonna Mega, but even that's somewhat predictable. So yeah, I really like Megas. I like generations where Megas exist. I like Megas a lot. Yeah. So whatever Megas, Gen 7 was dope, because I like the Tapus. Probably Gen 7 in terms of like just raw funness. But yeah, like the terrains, I love shit like just cool interactions, terrains with rain plus sun, and just love that shit. So probably the Gen 7 probably favorite in terms of just coolness. Z-moves are the only like whatever, but and then beast moves. I say beast moves, ultra beast, and then competitively Gen 6. Hey Jam, if you could travel to any place in time and history of the Earth just to experience it for a few hours, where would you go and why? It's a really interesting question that I've never considered. I don't really think about history very much. I think I wouldn't even say I'm a future guy as much either. I wouldn't even say I'm in the present that much. I don't know what the fuck going on. Need help. A jam. In the history of the earth, I'd probably say maybe Atlantis. What I'm really fascinated about is whether or not when I think about how advanced we are today, quote unquote, and then I think about whenever I read ancient texts and I'm like, how in the world did they know this stuff? Right? They'll put it in different language, right? So like, for example, modern quantum physics revelations back in, you know, the time of Egypt, they could call, or you know, back in, I don't know what they would have called it in India, that era, but they'd have books and you know, that describes the same phenomena, but in ancient terms. It's like, how could you have known that? And so I actually think people in the history in history are fucking brilliant. Like no running water, like, you know, it's just insane. And so I'd just be curious to see how they navigated life, and I often draw inspirations in hard times from that fact. I was like, you know, there was a time where, yeah, and you know, what kind of understanding of the laws of physics that we don't have currently did people so ancient used to build things like pyramids, you know, like, yeah. So, and then just inscribe things that transcend thousands of years, or Atlantis. So some ancient civilization from a bird's eye view standpoint, and just how you can be so advanced but so archaic at the same time. Good question. Odom Piano. How do you pick the game back up after 4 years, only having played a minuscule amount of then Gen 8? Needless to say, that time was spent losing to things that were and are still out of comprehension. The initial information wall, right? That makes sense. So a new player who considering getting back in but didn't know the game that much. And so he goes into further detail. The initial information wall, there are a lot of mons for sure. The information wall after learning the basics, losing it all and not understanding why, and losing motivation through it. The expectancy of knowledge. A lot of online sources talk about momentum, for example. Something barely anyone tries. That's a fucking fact. Most people don't know what the fuck they're talking about when they say momentum. You notice that's not a concept that I use. It exists, but momentum is more of a psychological phenomena than something actually happening on the field. You're like, you need to get momentum. But yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Momentum does have psychological effects though. Like when a player feels like they're in a trap versus actually being in a trap. Yeah. The expectancy of knowledge, lack of proper learning environments, ladders, unfortunately not it most of the time. For old returning players, the clash of old knowledge versus new knowledge. The answer is the academy. No. Well, it would have been back in the day. But we're gonna get there again. The new a lot of the first half, honestly, is going back to this right here. The only answer to this, bro, is you gotta actually enjoy playing Pokemon. Right here, the downside of understanding this stuff is that you understand this stuff, meaning it's like playing tennis for the first time and you know
you know that the levels beyond where you are exist, and it's so evident in your face. And so as you're learning to play the game, each mistake is being framed as another bit of evidence of where I'm not, versus holy shit, I'm learning something cool, new, and fun. So it's really a perspective thing. If you actually like Pokemon, then you won't have an issue. It's just a reframe, and you'll look like, I get to learn this cool ass game where I have to use critical thinking. It's one of the few games where I get to merge the right and left brain, the analytical brain and the creative brain, to problem solve in real time. Just like anywhere else in life, right? In chess, you don't use your creative brain. I mean, you do to some extent, but you're using primarily your left brain because the pieces never change. In Pokemon, that's not the case. You create quite literally and optimize it. And that's one of the most beautiful, amazing, fun things. But if you lose yourself in the status game of ladder, and the ladder is one of the best places to learn, but you don't want to learn on the ladder, most likely because you're losing. And because you're losing, you think the ladder is a problem. But really, I just say you either don't like the game in and of itself enough. You do like the game, but you've forgotten that the point of the game is to like the game. Or this is just not for you. And I'd recommend something else. Yeah. But because of that, there's no way around that. If you're perceiving it as something to get through, when can I hurry up and get good, then you're already at the wrong starting block, and it's not gonna go very well. Did a teacher inspire you? For me, you kind of use all the good tools that a teacher uses. And then I asked him, good question, inspire me to do what? What kind of parallels do you notice? And he said, the way you use metaphors, I think, is how it's written. Sometimes it's an example, I think, I don't know. When I read your community posts, I feel like I'm talking with one of my teachers. I'm Brazilian, so I don't know how I express myself. If I expressed myself correctly, hope I did. You did a great job, bro. I feel like you can merge the lines of personal experience and new knowledge and new perspectives. It's something that I see at least my teachers do to catch the students' attention in a way that makes information stick. Yeah, that's something that I've had to study. But it comes from the first thing we talked about, which is my aim is to the mission of this channel, and I reworded it recently. The mission of this channel is to create a place where logic-driven Pokemon players use their hobby to get smarter. Right? My audience is very much like me, which makes sense. They're very like pragmatic guys. They're pragmatic males. Most of my audience are men. All my coaching clients are men. And they like intellectual pursuits. They like to get a boost to their brain. They like to feel smarter. They like to be smart. They like to sharpen their thinking. Like I do. I like to do all those things as well. But they also don't like BS. They like shit broken down, where it's like, okay, that makes sense. If I do, I listen. How come I didn't see this question? You notice I didn't like it. You listen to Frank Ocean, so what's your favorite song? I don't listen to Frank Ocean. I know maybe a song. You know that one that he talks about, I've been thinking about you. But no, I've never listened to a Frank Ocean song. I'm sorry, brother. And then the last question, what are your favorite must-read books, ones, or the ones the most impactful and forgettable? They're kind of two different questions. What are those? I'd say the book I've read the most in my life is a book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. But that's a very, like, you'd have to be the type to be into philosophy to some extent. My voice might sound slightly different because I'm looking at my bookshelf. What's a good question? Let me see. I'd say The Alchemist is one I'd recommend. It teaches you a lot about a lot, but in an engaging way, and it's not a long listen. It's about 4 hours to listen to. Very engaging. So I'd put that there. I think, what were some transformational books for me? Because I read, it's the audiobook, like dozens of books a week. Maybe not dozens, maybe 8 dozen, or maybe 7. I don't know. I want to answer that sincerely. Obviously, you know, Mindset by Carol Dweck is in there in terms of what I think would be really good for my audience. Let me look at my actual shelf and see what's there that I'd go, you know. I don't know. Letting Go by David Hawkins. If you're dealing with emotional strain is a good one. But it's not, you know, there are a lot of like books that are like useful and like the appropriate time. Just thinking like most impactful for me specifically. Yeah, I don't know to think about that one. Honestly, I thought, excuse me, it would roll off the tongue a lot more easily. But there are probably plenty of them. It's just that, you know, when you absorb the information, you don't really think about Mode 1. Actually, I like that. Mode 1 by Alan Roger Curry. For guys out there, that's usually one I recommend for clients. Particularly guys who struggle with authenticity. Mode 1 by Alan Roger Curry was a major one in my younger years. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to really think that through. But there are a lot of quality books. But I'd say As a Man Thinketh is the book I've read the most in my life. Mode 1 is good. Something I've recommended quite often. And yeah, I'm looking at my bookshelf. That's crazy. Like, there's nothing. The Way of a Superior Man is solid. I'd say The Way of a Superior Man is up there. That's a book I read more than once. Now when I was a lot younger. That laid the foundation for a lot of things today. The Way of a Superior Man is good by David Data. So yeah, those are be my I'm really like nerdy and into psych, human behavior, and philosophy and neurology and neuroscience. Like, that's my world. So like, those are very technical books. I'm sure they're like in a more general case, and like, I don't read fiction very often other than The Alchemist. Like, I have to be learning some first principle of existence whenever I'm reading. That's my interest. So I think that is it for the questions. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. This is funny. So shout out to Steve Maverick, the most miserable guy on earth. Nah, he's not. Steve deep down just was hurt. Steve was hurt. Pokemon hurt Steve. Steve lost a critical battle. Steve had a critical moment in his life where he just refused to. Every post I make, or many of them, he will basically comment with some version of this: no amount of prediction or positive thinking will prevent hacks. Basically, his thesis is that no amount of skill will make Pokemon is completely dependent upon hacks and luck, and no skill involvement is there. Well, when we talked about You Are the Avatar, I could probably predict a couple things about Steve's life if he holds that point of view, because as I said, who we are offline is who we are online. Can't escape you. And so what Steve is telling me right now is that because Pokemon mirrors life very closely, you have an intention, and there are unexpected situations that can get you off track, but you have to do what you can to stay true to that objective in spite of the obstacles. And so it's evident here that Steve blames the game for some failure he had. He really put his all into something and failed. Or, you could say he lost. He didn't fail. He only failed because he adopted this mindset. And as a result of that, he now goes and says, it wasn't me. And everybody who's ever been good at Pokemon in a consistent way, I know that the same people are always number one, but that's just because of luck and randomness, right? As if, by definition, luck and randomness means there is no consistency. It means there's no pattern to it. So if the same person or the same people are always the best players, or when we get people who go into the academy, they jump an average of 100 to 400 points in their first month. That's luck. No, there's a pattern. So yeah, I'd say, what happens if you just get frozen 6 times regardless of your state of mind? I'd say hell yeah. Cause that's some motherfucking opportunity right there. In a moment like that, you go, oh well, woe is me. Woe is me. And you fold. Or you get mad. Let it run its course. You come back swinging. It's really that simple. And so Steve, I always chuckle at your comments because I know you're probably a good guy underneath it all. Well, not probably, I'm certain. But initially when he said this the first time, I thought he was trolling, but he says this often. So I was like, damn, Steve is subscribed to me, so he doesn't have an issue. He's never said anything negative about me. He just wants other people to think Pokemon is skillless, and he's gonna die on that stick. So hey, be great, Steve. And yep, it was all the ladder's fault, bro. It wasn't you. It wasn't your fault. The reason you lost was because of everybody else. Everybody else got lucky, and you were just dealt a bad hand. And yeah, you would have been the best if it wasn't for Pokemon being just a luck-based game. You would have had everything you wanted if it wasn't for the ladder and the luck-based players. What else? Yeah, it's just none of this None of this has anything. You're right, dude. You're right. Pokemon's a shit game. It's not you, it's the meta game. It's the player base, it's Smogon. It's life. God, you know, you were born with your brain wasn't sharp enough to learn. You didn't have the Pokemon gene. You were dealt wrong. All of it. It's true. Or maybe that's what you need. Maybe that's what you want to hear. And then now you know, okay, it's not your fault. You can move on in peace, but at the very least not be on these videos trying to convince other people that Pokemon is fully luck based, you know. That's where I'd end it, y'all. Hopefully y'all enjoyed, and hit the like button if you did. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.